There's honestly no other platform out there like YouTube that gives creators the ability to potentially make millions of dollars on it, and the amount of freedom that comes with that can be incredible. But one thing that YouTube never compromises on is its copyright policy. It does not allow creators to re-upload another person's original work. Yet you see tons of channels re-uploading people's videos and making tons of money doing so. One great example that you may even be familiar with is the channel Watch Mojo. It's a faceless channel in the movie and celebrity niche, and it just re-uploads different movie parts, does commentary on them.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 movie portrayals of real-life gangsters.
Come on, Donnie. Help me fillet this fat.
And currently the channel has over 25 million subscribers, and according to Social Blade, they're making millions of dollars per year just from ad revenue alone. Another example is the channel Dr. Insanity. This is a real-life crime incident-based channel that uses other people's footage and garners over 1 million views on every video. And apart from just these two, there's hundreds of other channels out there that are almost entirely based on other people's content. They do not show their faces, the clips do not belong to them, and sometimes even the voices in these videos are not theirs. But these channels are somehow ranking high in terms of views, subscribers, and most importantly, revenue. And this begs the literally million-dollar question: if YouTube has such rigid copyright rules, then how are such channels still working? How are these faceless channels making millions avoiding copyright? Well, in this video, I'm going to be answering your copyright-related questions, and this is coming from somebody who actually runs over 12 of these channels that do exactly this. A lot of them are based on using other people's videos. Now, a big disclaimer before we get into this video: I am not a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer, so this is not legal or financial advice in any way. Take this for what it is, the entertainment value that it is, but today I'm just talking from my personal understanding in doing this. Now, if you're interested in YouTube automation, which obviously you are if you click to watch this video, you should learn what copyright actually means. And to find the answer to this question, I'm not going to make you jump through a bunch of hoops doing a ton of research to find this. YouTube's support page has this answered for us. According to YouTube support, when somebody creates an original work, whether it be a video, a song, or a picture, they automatically hold the copyright to that work. Only they or the people they allow can use, reproduce, or display this copyrighted content. If we look at YouTube's copyright policy, it strictly says creators should only upload videos that they have made or that they are authorized to use. This means they should not upload videos that they didn't make or use content that somebody else owns the copyright too. And just looking at that, it might seem like, how could we possibly use somebody else's content with YouTube spelling it out like that? You may think that nobody could use anybody else's content, but still, there's so many channels, including many of my own, that are using other people's content in the form of clips within their own videos. They might be asking, Matt, how do these channels get away with this without getting tons of copyright claims and getting all of this shut down immediately? Well, these channels are able to do this because they're protected by a copyright doctrine known as fair use. You might have heard of fair use before, but you probably have some misconceptions about it if you haven't taken the time to really understand what fair use actually means. Fair use says that in certain situations, you can use copyrighted material without asking for permission from the copyright owner. And this is an exception to that rule that we talked about earlier. Now, this might sound like a magical word, and you might think that this is specific to YouTube. Well, no, this is specific to anybody reusing anybody else's copyright material, at least within the United States. So therefore, YouTube does not make the determination whether something is fair use or whether it's not fair use. So if your channel deals with copyright claims or copyright strikes, and we'll talk about those a little bit more later in this video, it could theoretically go to court. And then you'll have to comply with the local laws of where you're dealing with that dispute. So different countries and regions have different laws and different rules when it applies to this, but we're going to be talking about fair use under the American context, since YouTube is an American company. And there's 4 super important factors that we take into consideration whenever we are using content under the doctrine of fair use. If the content that you're copying checks all 4 of these factors, in my opinion, it's going to be in a much better position, and it'll be following the fair use guidelines that not only YouTube sets out, but the legal system also sets out in terms of fair use. And remember, I'm not a lawyer, this is just my understanding of this, but I hope this helps. So let's first of all talk about what is not not fair use. Compilations aren't fair use, and just linking to another video in your description and saying that you gave them credit is also not, unfortunately, fair use. Now, this may seem like a bad thing because then it's not super easy just to re-upload other people's videos and make compilations. You've probably seen tons of compilations out there. If you literally just look up cat compilation, you'll see tons of videos that are uploaded with millions of views, a lot of them. But unfortunately, a lot of these videos are not able to get monetized. And even if they are, a lot of them get claimed by who owns the original footage, and therefore the money can go to them in some circumstances. And even if a channel does make money short term, like with compilation videos per se, it might be just that, short term. It might not be building a real long-term business with YouTube, which I want to help you do. I would much rather you build a long-term business that you're happy with, that you're able to make money with over a long period of time, because then the work you're putting into this is way more worth it. And while you think this might be a bad thing, it can actually be a good thing depending on how you look at it. I choose to look at this as a really good thing because these copyright protections help our content, first of all, stay protected, and secondly, it adds a barrier to entry that a lot of people who are just going into making money on YouTube don't want to do. So the competition for us is less, and there's not many people really doing this the right way. And the ones that are doing this the right way are a lot of the ones running those big channels like Watch Mojo, for example. They are doing this the right way, in my opinion. So factor number one when it comes to fair use is the purpose of the content. If your purpose of the content is to directly compete with the content that you're using, that is not going to be a good fair use defense, in my opinion. So say you find a video of like a cat video or something like that, and you literally just re-upload it to YouTube. It's going to be directly competing with that original cat video. So the purpose of that content is not good in YouTube's eyes and in fair use's eyes. However, if you make a piece of content that's, for example, news-based, and you're reporting on news about something that have happened, and you're talking about that cat video in the context of a larger story, that is a much better defense in terms of fair use, in my opinion. So if it's being used for news or entertainment or education in some way, and it's part of a larger context in the video that you're using, that's much better. So if I was, for example, going to use that cat video example, and I did an educational video, let's say, about the top 10 best cat breeds, and I showed that video for only a couple of seconds as I was talking about a particular cat breed, that would be a much better use, in my opinion. That's what I personally would do. And to demonstrate this further, let me give you some examples of some channels that are almost entirely based on using other people's content. And the first one I'm going to point to is a channel called Top 5s. This is a channel that actually inspired my faceless YouTube journey. It was one of the first ones that I saw out there, and it inspired me to start making some faceless videos myself. And boy, am I glad that I did, because now I've made millions of dollars from YouTube, and I've been lucky enough to completely change my life, not have to go to college, work a 9-to-5 job. Apologies for going through that if this is the 1000th time that you've heard it, but that Top 5s channel is mostly educational and entertainment based. So they're going to be making videos where the footage that they use is part of a larger context within their video. And there's always a voiceover on top of the video, and it's talking about different subjects and using those videos that it might use from other YouTube channels within the context of that. So transforming the content and giving it another purpose is our first factor when it comes to fair use. Now, the second factor is the source of the content. If you're going to be using content from highly copyrighted sources, for example, movies, TV shows, or stuff like that, channels like Watch Mojo have shown us that this is certainly possible, but don't expect a low barrier to entry if you're going to be doing that. You will likely still deal with copyright problems if you're using clips from movies and TVs and everything, because YouTube has a built-in content ID system which will scan your video and you'll get a copyright claim much sooner. You can always dispute that claim, like Watch Mojo probably has to deal with, and they probably do that quite a bit. But in my opinion, the source of the content, grabbing it from highly copyrighted places, is not the best for beginners with faceless channels, in my opinion. Factor number 3 is the amount of content. So if you're just using a couple seconds from a clip, it's way more likely to be considered fair use than if you show a full 10-minute video within your video. So you want to be switching up clips often, and a way to really help with this is to intermix stock footage throughout your video. You can get that from places like Storyblocks, for example, or if you want some free places, Pixabay or Pexels. And just keeping the amount of copyrighted material you use within your video, especially specific clips, keeping that to a minimum really helps. In the past, I've said, keep it under 10-13 seconds, and I've called it the 13-second rule. But really, this isn't a hard rule, and this is a big misconception that a lot of people have had, and I always need to specify, this isn't a hard rule, but rather it's just a best practice for doing this, in my personal opinion. Factor number 4 is the nature of the copyrighted work. So what this means is that using material from primarily factual sources is more likely to be considered fair use than from fictional sources. And YouTube tells us this on their website. And what this essentially means is that in general, if you use footage from a factual source, you'll likely be in a better position than from a fictional TV show or movie. Not to say that can't work, because we've already talked about channels doing that, but it's just one more factor to consider that YouTube gives us on their help page regarding fair use. Now at this point you might be saying, Matt, that's a lot to remember. How am I going to actually implement this actionably on my YouTube channel? And what does all this information actually mean? Well, the reason I've told you all this so far is so you can start just understanding at a high level exactly how fair use works and start thinking in a way that is beneficial to fair use on your channel. But now I want to go over some actionable steps that you can take. Think of this sort of like a checklist. This is what I personally use when I'm generating more content, paying other people to make it for me, making some myself. This is the checklist I look for in terms of fair use on my videos. Number one, I always want to make sure to have an original voiceover and a script for that voiceover that is not only original, but also provides value to the end viewer, which can be educational or entertainment value. Any kind of value it's given to the end viewer is going to be very beneficial within this part of the checklist. So have an original voiceover. Number two, keep the amount of individual clips used to a minimum. I try to keep it under 10 seconds. Again, not a hard rule of fair use, but it's just a best practice that I've personally found. It may also help videos not get flagged automatically with YouTube's Content ID system. Number three, show mini clips. So this means, for example, putting stock footage in between your clips, maybe referencing articles that you're talking about, showing those on the screen, showing screen recordings, all these type of things. Next, give credit to the original clip that you're using in the description. Now, this is optional. You don't have to do this. YouTube tells us that this might not even make a difference in the final analysis if something's fair use or not. But what I found is that this typically increases goodwill between you and the person's clip that you're using, because you're basically just giving them a free shout out. So I think it can't hurt to do that. And in my opinion, it's a good idea to do when you can. Now, I typically only do this if I'm showing a super large portion of a clip within my video. Like for example, let's say I do a video about the top 10 fastest cars in the world, and I show this one video for quite an extended period of time, then I'll definitely want to give credit to that in the description. And it's just a best practice in my opinion. Now, even doing all of this, there is still a potential of dealing with copyright problems. And if you run a YouTube channel, you will probably have to deal with this sometime within your YouTube journey. It doesn't have to be this big scary thing. I deal with this all the time on my faceless YouTube channels. And the way that I deal with this is that number one, I make sure that all of my content follows fair use. And number two, when these pop up, I make sure to dispute these claims, because at the end of the day, I'm following fair use guidelines. So I've had to deal with this dozens upon dozens of times throughout my YouTube journey. I just go into the YouTube studio, dispute the claim, and it allows you to write in why your video is fair use. So I make sure to mention that I follow all of the fair use guidelines that YouTube gives us. I make sure to make it different in nature from the original, and I make sure to actually have my video following fair use guidelines. But even doing all this, there's always the potential of dealing with copyright claims, copyright strikes, whatever. So make sure to dispute it as long as you actually followed fair use. I've never had to deal legally with anything that's resulted from this, but that is a possibility. But there are ways of running channels where you never have to deal with copyright at all. Now, at this point in the video, you might be saying, Matt, that sounds really attractive to me. I would love to just not even have to think about any of this stuff. And if that's you, you can look into channels like running stock footage based channels, which you literally only basically use stock footage within your videos. And channels like World According to Breaks in the travel niche do this, or channels like Body Hub within the health niche do this, or channels like Brainy Dose within the psychology niche also do this. It's basically just stock footage throughout their videos, and they do a voiceover on top of that stock footage, and they do incredibly well. So you could do channels like that. You could do like scary story channels, which are basically just a story that you wrote yourself with like a stock image or even a stock video in the background of it. You won't have to deal with copyright then. Run an animation channel where you pay someone to animate the videos for you. Or if you have original content that you own, for example, I'm recording this video right here, so I own this video, therefore I own the copyrights to it, won't have to deal with problems there. Make sure to use music from the YouTube audio library. You don't have to deal with like copyright problems from music or anything like that. Make it simple, use music from the YouTube audio library. Or if you need a bigger selection, Storyblocks has you covered there. Also, Storyblocks is what I personally use as well. Or do things like screen recording tutorials where you own the content that you're screen recording. Now, do not let this video scare you off from doing faceless YouTube channels. I know we went over a lot within this video, but I hope I made this subject a little bit bit less scary for you, because at the end of the day, YouTube has completely changed my life with running faceless channels. And if this video can just stop you from, for example, starting a compilation channel where you'd have to deal with copyright all the time, and instead run a channel where you either follow fair use guidelines and you do it the right way as I specified throughout this video, feel free to go back to the fair use checklist at any time, screenshot that or whatever, or you run one of those channels where you never have to deal with copyright either. As long as I've helped you with that, then I consider my job well done. And if you want to run a faceless YouTube channel, I've made you a completely free training that you can check out next to me right here. In this free training right here, I basically give you the keys to the kingdom for doing this. I go over the best niches to do this in, how to generate tons of content without ever showing your face. Yes, I said generate, not making the content, and also how to actually get tons of views and subscribers doing this and monetize to the next level so it's worth it to you. Check out this video right here. My name is Matt Parr, and I'll see you there.